Hello everybody and welcome to my hairdo. So this was a really nice surprise. I have been added to a tag by Alex at whatpageareyouon. It's a, what is it called? It's a mid-year book freakout tag, which is very apt because I'm constantly freaking out about everything. So yes, not only did he add me on this tag, but he also gave me a shout out, which I was very grateful for, and he said some really nice things about me and the channel, which was really nice, really cool. So thank you, Alex. And because of that, I've had some new subscribers. So welcome everybody. But yeah, no, I was really grateful. It was really cool of him to do that. So thank you, Alex. And yes, I suppose I've got some questions to answer here. I need to calm down. I'm freaking out already. Right. So the first question, question one, is simply best book. So I'm guessing best book from the beginning of the year to now. And I think the best book I read was probably this one, Duck's Newburyport. I think it took me 3 months to get through it because I read it kind of in little bits in between reading other novels. And there were long sections of it where I thought it was a real slog. But by the end, when I got to the end, the overwhelming sense of satisfaction and reward and payoff just made it all worth it. And I was really impressed, really impressed by it. But no, there's bits in it that I love. There's some really esoteric cultural references in this, which is another reason why I love it. In particular, she keeps coming back to, she talks about Meryl Streep a lot, and she talks about the movie It's Complicated, which is a movie she did with Alec Baldwin. I think it was in 2009. And it's really funny because the character shares some opinions that I do about that film, and I just find it funny. If you haven't read it, then I would urge you to try at least. As I say, for me, the payoff at the end and the last kind of clause was really worth it. And yeah, it will be interesting when I return to this book kind of in the next couple of years maybe. It'll be interesting to see how it fares up on a reread, because because it's not just like a really long sentence. She does kind of structure certain things and plonk certain things in which do kind of pay off towards the end, so it'll be interesting to reread this. But yeah, this is definitely, I think, the best book that I've read so far in the year. Question two, best sequel. This isn't a sequel, but I am going to talk about Circe by Madeline Miller. It's not a sequel to Song of Achilles. However, there is a character, I think it's Odysseus. He's featured in Song of Achilles, which is the Trojan War and everything. But in this book, he features again, and it's kind of him after the Trojan War and his liaisons with Circe herself. And so whilst it's not a sequel, you can read it as a follow-on from Song of Achilles, even though it's about a completely different set of characters, barring Odysseus. So not really a sequel, but it's what I've got. Question three. New release, haven't read yet, but want to. What's the name of it? Yes, The Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree by Shukufar Azar. Yeah, that's a book that I like the look of. With the International Booker Prize, I think it was that book and Hurricane Season that most kind of intrigued me. And I've read Hurricane Season. And now I think, The Enlightenment of the Greengage Tree, I just like the sound of it, and from what people have said, it sounds like a good book, and it's been shortlisted. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Booker Prize. I can't remember when they're going to say they're going to announce it, whether it's been postponed or not. But yeah, that one seemed quite interesting because it's on magic realism and yeah, it just seemed quite interesting. Question four is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I am really looking forward to The Other Bennett Sister. I think that's going to be released in paperback anyway, later this year. The other Bennett sister, it is a novel focusing on Mary Bennett, who is the middle sister in the Bennett sisters in Pride and Prejudice. It's been a long time coming, a novel about Mary Bennett, I think. And from what I've read from people who've sort of had advanced copies and things, it seems to be a good book, so I'm really looking forward to that. Question 5. Biggest disappointment. So generally, I haven't really been too disappointed by the books that I've read this year. I've got this big ongoing project at the moment, not talking about reading novels in the second person. And one of them was Edna O'Brien, A Pagan Place. I have never read an Edna O'Brien novel before. She had a novel out recently, I believe, called Girl, which was kind of lauded, and although it sounded quite hard hitting, but yeah, I was really interested to read this one, as it was in the second person and seemed interesting. The reason it sort of disappointed me, this is a miserable novel. It's set in Ireland. It's the protagonist is a young, the protagonist is a young girl growing up relatively hand to mouth on a farm amongst this sort of small rural town in Ireland, and her older sister, for want of a better word, she's a bit of a goer. She gets herself pregnant, and the older sister, she has to leave and stuff. And the family do not take this well, particularly the father, and he kind of assumes that the protagonist is going to go down the same road, even though she's not at all. She's very, she's very, very, what's the word? Kind of timid, and she's not at all like anything like her sister. But the father sort of really kind of goes really, really strict and quite nasty towards her. And then, things start to go wrong, and it's just really, really miserable. And yeah, there's a few things that I had problems with. There's a minor character who is referred to from the outset as a racial slur, and I'm having a hard time kind of reconciling what I feel about that. This was published in 1970, and you could argue it is, she's reflecting, Edna O'Brien, she's reflecting, the time and the place. But it was just, I just found it a bit uncomfortable. Question 6. Biggest surprise is probably Mansfield Park. And it's the biggest surprise probably because I didn't know anything about this novel before I read it. And it was the last, I'm slowly going through Jane Austen's work, and I didn't know anything about this novel at all, didn't know the plot or anything. And the surprise was just really how much I enjoyed it and how much I was really kind of hooked by it. And even though, as a Jane Austen plot, I think I've sort of talked about this before, but you do know what's going to happen at the end. But with this, I found it, whilst, towards in the middle of it, I was like, this could go either way. I don't know whether she's going to get with Mr. Crawford or not. I was very much on the side of Fanny Price, rooting for Fanny Price. Question 7 is favourite new author, debut or new to you. New to me is W. Somerset Maugham. I read The Razor's Edge, recently, and yeah, I really enjoyed that. It's made me want to read more of his stuff because I enjoyed the writing in it, and he seems to be quite an interesting character. Like, according to the internet, he was like the highest paid author of his time at one stage in his career, and he was really, really prolific. And I'm interested to see, because The Razor's Edge has a really kind of sort of bizarre narrative structure device, and I'm interested to see what he does in his other novels, So yes, W. Somerset Maugham. If you haven't read his novels, then do. I'm going to endeavour to do the same. Question 8 is new fictional crush. So Madeline Miller, Madeline Miller, she is very good, I think. She's very good at describing buff men. Odysseus, I mean, he's got his flaws, Odysseus, but there's something about him where I was like, I could relate to Circe kind of falling head over heels for him. I was like, he sounds quite Odysseus. I don't know whether it's in this one or in Song of Achilles, where Madeline Miller, she describes his calf muscles, and anyone who doesn't skip leg days rings my bell, if you know what I mean. Question 9 is new favourite character, and I think now, having read Pride and Prejudice, Caroline Bingley is just fabulous. I'm a big fan of the 90s. If you've seen a certain other video on my channel, you know that I'm a big fan of the 90s adaptation, BBC adaptation, and I think is it Anne Chancellor, I think, who plays her, and she's great in that. So I knew that I kind of enjoyed the character anyway, but reading it off the page, I was just so like, Caroline Bingley, yes, she's just Mr. Darcy. Well, fine eyes, is it? And all that, so I just thought she was hilarious. Question 10, a book that made me cry was this one, Freshwater by Kweki Emezi. This really kind of took me off guard. It's it's mainly about gender, and there's some really, really interesting and fascinating stuff about gender in there. But it talks about mental health, because there's a section in it where things are really low. She's in a very, very low place, or they're in a very low place, excuse me. The protagonist, they're in a very, very low place, and this spirit character, I'm not going to go into the plot, but this spirit character is sort of telling them what they should do, and it just really hit. It really just hit, and I was like, ooh, that's really, really sad. It's really, really sad. The book itself isn't sad. It's very, very powerful. But yeah, I was just took off guard by a bit in it. I would really recommend it. It's very, very different. Question 11, a book that made me happy. I think possibly, I don't have it with me, but Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. That made me smile. It's I mean, everyone's read it, so I won't go on too much about it, but it did make me smile. It was really, really funny. And I think it's kind of one of those books which, even though it has sort of dark themes within it, overall it's got a message of friendship, and there's something really endearing and uplifting about that book and the character and stuff. So that made me smile. So Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine is a book that made me happy. Question 12 is the most beautiful book I bought or received, and I don't know. I think possibly this one, just because this is Tori Amos's new memoir, Resistance, and I don't know. I just like as I said before, I don't usually buy hardcover books, but I was really sort of eager to get my hands on this, and I just like the cover. It's this burning piano, and Tori Amos, she's sort of her look is of a red head, and so you've got the sort of, it's almost sort of red hair, fire sort of stuff, and it's really, really, I think it's sort of very, very apt cover. So yeah, possibly this one. The last question 13, is books to read by the end of the year. So fiction-wise, Sense and Sensibility, and then that will be my Jane Austen finished novels complete. I've got to get round to Jane Flipping Air, and then towards autumn, winter, I want to have a go at Brothers Karamazov. I want to have a go at that. So yeah, there we go. That was my first my first tag. So again, thank you very much to Alex for tagging me. I would tag other people, but I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone on BookTube yet. So yes, if you're watching this and you are a booktuber or you have a YouTube channel of any kind, then I hereby tag you. But yes, so thank you again for watching. Thank you, Alex, for tagging me. I hereby tag you if you're watching this, and happy reading, and hopefully next time you see me, something will have happened with this Barnet. Yes, goodbye. Oh God, look at this.